That's quite a challenge, right? Having this speech right now after lunch and before the lottery, that's going to be, yeah, let me dive into that. The presentation is about 30 minutes, and I want to just dive into, and basically it's about 3 customers we did. So it's, let's say, 3 to 4 slides about the understanding, what we see there, but then it's about 2 to 3 customers, what we actually did there. Feel free, and as far, Jeremy, as I understood, we have a Q&A session afterwards, right? Okay, thank you. So around IoT, I mean, to be honest, when you talk about IoT, and I mean, didn't we have this already? If you see all these buzzwords flying around with IoT, with Internet of Things, with big data, to be honest, that's something we had already for the last, let's say, 2 to 3 years. So the question also for our customers today is where is the difference? What's the difference right now? Why is everybody talking about IoT? And what's the challenge there for our partners, for Microsoft, and where are the business opportunities? When customers, when partners, when we talk to them, there are basically kind of 4 different buckets, I would like to say, where this kind of IoT segment services always flow into. First of all, it's when customers talk about IoT, it's to actually become more insight and to become more agile. Because, I mean, these sensor data are available already. If you see all these solutions we have, most of them are first based on an existing scenario there. So it's about becoming more agile and getting more insights in existing scenarios what you have. The second thing is, of course, to see what kind of competitive advantages you can pull out of that. The competitive advantages, especially in, let's say, Central Europe, extremely important. Because when you talk to investment good industry, within the investment good industry, there is a huge pressure for the investment good itself. So the competitive advantage there is increasing life cycle, is increasing maintenance, is doing predictive and preventive maintenance scenarios. It is, of course, new business scenarios. And when you see companies like Airbnb, Uber, Lyft, then these companies, Airbnb is the biggest hotel provider in the world, and they don't have one single bed. So it is really creating new business opportunities out of an existing solution based on an existing installation. And the second thing, of course, is redefining customer service, especially within Austria, where you see manufacturers for machineries investing into their maintenance scenario, see what can we do to actually deliver more and better customer service. Of course, it's a noisy landscape. Just some of them here. When we talk to customers, to our partners, we see there are a lot of different viewpoints there. And you may think that, especially with IoT, and you see all these partners presenting here, that this is kind of a competitive play there. For us, it is not. Within IoT and the solutions, the offerings I'm going to demonstrate to you, I'm going to show to you, is always about integrating. So the noisy landscape there is making sure that when you are as a partner, as a customer, you have to make sure that these different little segments, that they fit together. And I think this is something being extremely important to deliver a successful IoT project. What are the things in an enterprise? I think there are actually 2 important things on this slide. First of all, it's kind of, let's say, sensor data on the left-hand side, and it's the kind of existing data you have as of today. The reason why I always show this slide is the definition for big data is when you have ERP, on-premise data, and social data coming together. And that's the interesting part on IoT. It's in addition to existing data you have. And with that, with existing data, there is a huge amount of momentum what you can do. The presentation, the title of the presentation is something with cities, so this is more kind of, you think, public sector, and it's industrial companies. In the first one, it seems kind of a pretty weird situation, having cities and industrial companies, but at the end of the day, they face all the same challenges. If you see cities, and I'm quite sure that most of you know these numbers, then it does make sense to talk to cities. It's actually, when we talk to cities, we call this urban infrastructures, because it's not just the city of Wien, it's the area around Wien. So, but there is a huge amount of momentum of people moving to cities. This is still it. And if I ask you what are the 10 biggest cities in the world, I can't name them to you because the 10 biggest ones are all in China. So the growth in cities, the movement into cities is outstanding. So it just makes sense to have an eye on that. What kind of offerings do you have as a customer, as a partner for these cities? The issues are complex. The one thing we have an eye on is, first of all, the youth. Youth is migrating to cities. That's one of the statements we saw is youth, younger people, they merge to cities and they stick in the cities. To get them out into the countryside is something you will hardly not be able to do. One of the blocks I would like to highlight out there is energy consumption. In the European Union, 40% of all energy being used is just for lights. So the light you have in here, the light you have in street lights at home, 40% of the energy we consume in the European Union is just for lights. And out of that is already a beautiful IoT case. What can you do in order to save energy, save energy by doing smarter lighting systems? The opportunities are rewarding. And if there's one segment where I would say it makes the most sense to actually invest, then have an eye on two things in a city. And it's the blocks in the middle. First of them is energy management. What can you do around heating, around, as mentioned, around lights? And the second block is increased safety and pollution. A city like Vienna, a typical city in Europe, when you have, the number is when you have 100,000 people in a city of that size, 100,000 people, the public transportation produces 2 tons of iron dust per year, just because of braking and accelerating. So the public transportation is something where there is a huge lever making sure we decrease pollution in there, we increase offerings there. I would like to show you one case what we did, especially around what can you do around pollution. And you may smile when you think about it. What's the case? The case is a port. There are not that many ports in the northern part of Germany. It is about port and traffic. And if you think, what is the reason? Why should there be an integration with port and traffic? A port in general in the European Union is politically always very well connected because it has to do with trading goods, with warehousing, with stuffs coming in and out. And it's one of the biggest employer you have. One of the biggest employer is always in a port. When you talk to Amsterdam, to Rotterdam, to Hamburg, to Bremerhaven, ports are always important. That's, by the way, the same thing in Austria for airports. Airports and ports have the same issue. It's both of them ports. And within airports and within ports, there's a huge competition. You face the same thing here with the airport, but among ports, there's a huge competition. Where and when do you offload material? And now the thing, right now, that doesn't sound like a brilliant IoT case, but the challenge right now is, if you see this ship here, that's it was when we started the project about 9 months ago. Good 9 months ago. That was the largest ship, but just for 2 weeks. Then the Chinese had another bigger ship than that one. And this ship is about 400 meters long and has 19,000 containers on it. Okay? These typical containers you see on the road. The challenge right now is, if you have 19,100 containers on a ship, and you have 6 ships roughly like that coming in per day, then you have 114,000 containers. 114,000 containers per day. And you know what the challenge is right now? You need 114,000 trucks to get rid of these containers. And there you see the figure coming in. You have this little port, 100,000 containers standing there, And now you have 100,000 trucks. And let me ask you, what happens if you have 100,000 trucks not being organized and controlled in the right way? How do you actually want to monitor them? How do you actually want to control them? And this is a very beautiful IoT solution, how you organize, how you steer the thing between the containers you have there, and you have the trucks actually picking up these containers. So it obviously makes sense to somehow integrate the port and the traffic solution. What did we do? We first picked up the whole shipment from this ship so that we have a kind of an overview when and where these numbers arrive. If you do not coordinate that well and you have a delay of about 1 hour in offloading this ship, the traffic junction, the Stau as we say, is about 80 kilometers on the Autobahn. You have 80 kilometers if you're not controlling that right. So what did we do? We put in place a kind of a location-based service, so we're good and able to track where the trucks are actually on the road right now. And we do that when these trucks, for example, entering the country from Switzerland to Germany. So this is roughly 800 kilometers away. 800 kilometers away from the port, we pick up these trucks and we give them a pretty precise time when they have to be on the dock to pick up this container. Anyone an estimation in here what the time frame, the window is? We allow this truck to then arrive on this quay to pick up the container? 10 minutes, 15 minutes? We reduced it down to 20 seconds. So when this truck is crossing the border from Switzerland to Germany, 800 kilometers away, we're able to tell this truck, you have to drive a bit faster, you have to stop, you have to drive slower. 20 seconds plus minus, we're able to control this truck to pick up exactly this container he's asked to pick up. And that's one thing where you see this truck, they don't have to brake, they don't have to wait anywhere. It is just by integrating and doing location-based services. And how a portal like that is looking like, don't try to read it, but I brought you a snapshot from the portal. You see the ship itself, you see the container, and you see all the specific metrics where the truck is right now, where the container is right now. So we have a very good dashboard in place controlling this kind of container. And that's already a good overview. When you see IoT, IoT is an interesting thing to talk about right now. But if you're not integrating IoT with analytics and you're not having a kind of a CRM and a dashboard on top of that, then the whole story is useless. And that's one of the things I have to say when I talk to customers. A lot of customers come to us and say, hey, can we do this with IoT? Can you help with that on IoT? But at the end of the day, it is not about IoT. It is about analytics, doing something meaningful with this data. So keep in mind, when we talk about IoT, we always mean doing something useful with this information. I already mentioned it. IoT is not a solution coming from Microsoft or from our partners or competitors. IoT is always an integration layer. IoT is this one solution you just saw is, it is 12 different partners making sure you have this one dashboard running. So IoT is always a joint play when you have to work together with partners, you have to integrate partners, sometimes partners lead, sometimes Microsoft lead. But starting with IoT is something where you usually have a lot of partners being engaged, trying to achieve the same thing. The one thing I brought to you is a city we did in Germany, the city of Darmstadt. And we did this city, and feel free to ping me afterwards. You can see this running live. You can see this running live on the internet. We integrated 16,000 sensors from that city. So these 16,000 sensors are basically the street lights, the red lights, the public transportation system. And the reason why we did it is pretty simple. First of all, I mean, that's something you already know, is how do you get around this situation that you have traffic congestions, you have staus in the city. You want to reduce staus, and you want to reduce fine dust. Fine dust is in the European one of the most critical thing. So you have to have such a solution in place in order, on top of that, to do something meaningful. These kind of 16,000 sensors we did for the city of Darmstadt, these 16,000 sensors, they already existed. So it is not Microsoft installing sensors. Please, we are not installing sensors. This is, if we have to, this is something partners do. But at the end of the day, we deliver dashboard, we deliver meaningful solutions. And such a city, and on the left-hand side, you see that it is partners like Schroeder. Schroeder is one of the leading providers for lamp poles, for smart lamps. It is Siemens there. On the left-hand side, you see an interesting one. This is NXP. NXP is a sensor company coming from Philips. But as mentioned, it is a different kind of play. And the one thing I learned over the last 6 to 8 years doing these projects, there are not two similar IoT projects. IoT is always first from scratch. So when you start with a customer, IoT is always a beginning and it's a new journey. This is how the dashboard for the city is looking like. This time, it's not a dashboard you run on your mobile device. This is a head-up display you can put in the car, and you can see the system is predicting when the street light and when the next red light is switching to green. So it is giving you a kind of an augmented reality in your car saying you can drive a bit faster, you can drive a bit slower. And the only thing why we did it is making sure you're not braking in front of a red light, trying to get rid of the fine dust creation by public sector, by public transportation. Cities is one thing. And talking to cities is interesting because within cities there are so many different scenarios in urban infrastructures, but it's also interesting to see what you can do around industrial companies. And I think you already got the clue, you already have the idea. First, it is trying to get aware about the internet data, about the IoT data, the sensor data you have, then doing something meaningful with it, analyze it, and then controlling something. And this is what we did for a big company doing bottling. It is really making sure that you have a worldwide network where all the machines are connected. So you see this dashboard, and if you think these are 78 different industry installations worldwide, and they report to one single installation in Atlanta. And one thing where you should have a focus on is, I mean, we connected all these machines to this one dashboard here, and still keep in mind, you have on the left-hand side, it's only in average 80% of the machines being constantly connected because of network errors, because of machine errors. And the other thing, and I think that's one of the major reasons why it makes sense to drive an IoT solution, is this other number here on the right-hand side. They have per day 1,600 serious alerts where machines are standing still. And this is one of the core reasons why customers talk to us. It is making sure that they have a higher uptime in production, better service, higher uptime in production they can use in order making sure machines are not standing still. That's for this company, they bottle per hour, they bottle 17 million bottles per hour. Think about what that means if you have a machine standing still for 1 hour. That's a loss of 17 million bottles. And that's why these customers come to us and say, what can we do making sure we increase this number and we decrease this number? That's such a pure basic IoT scenario. And how we do that is pretty simple. First of all, we connect these machines, and later on I have a screenshot of these machines. We deliver a dashboard where a kind of a call center in the backend can see worldwide where all these machines are installed. That having said, once you identified one of these, let's say, errors or alerts, what I showed to you, we send a signal to the field force maintenance guy, and the signal is not only containing the location where it is happening, we also give him a routing. These are very big installations, and you want to make sure that the engineer is passing there straight onward and not, taking another half a kilometer round tour. So this is something what we do, this kind of location-based services, giving them the right control. Where is the machine, where you have the issue, and where are you right now? one thing which came up in the last year, and I have to be honest, I was surprised about that too. All the world thinks about, smart solutions and maybe calling people, but the fitness industry is using a huge. I'm not using one, but these fitness arm belts, these watches, is something you can use very good in order to tell people, okay, hey, field force guy, you have to see this one machine there. It is not very much information you need to tell people what they actually have to do when it comes to maintenance. So everything what we learned years ago, where we said we have a mobile scenario running on your PDA, is something you are much more flexible for the first information, for the first signal, if you use these armbands. That nearly costs nothing. It gives you much more flexibility, and this is what we suggest to customers when we talk about IoT projects and controlling the field force. This is actually one of the machines I wanted to show to you. This is where the filling happens, and you can, from this dashboard I showed to you, you can really drill down. You can drill down until into the specific machines where you have this error occurring. As mentioned, we do this with 78 different installations worldwide. We didn't install one new sensor here. We didn't install one new sensor making this scenario happen. The one issue is, or the challenge you have in there is, you need a good project management. You have to deal, I think it is 90 countries worldwide. So doing a rollout like that, you have to be experienced around not less the sensor data, but making sure you have a platform in place which can scale. This is a specific look on this one of the machines, and the reason why I brought you this picture is, you see this guy on the right-hand side wearing one of these glasses. And if there is one thing out of the presentation today which you should take away for the next 1 to 2 years, then we are absolutely sure that these kind of lenses, or if this is HoloLens or Google Glass or whatever, that's something which will come up. If you want to control, if you want to tell a field force guy in front of one of these very complex machines what to do, you can hook this field force guy. You can hook him up to a call center somewhere on the other side of this earth and tell him through the glasses, tell him how he has to actually execute on maintaining this machine. That's something we definitely see coming up. We have the first customers within Microsoft doing that one. But this is, I don't want to say it's complex, but the business case itself has to be very crisp. And what I already mentioned in my introduction, especially within Austria, especially within the German-speaking part from Switzerland, where you have machinery industry, investment good industry, it is extremely expensive to maintain these machines. So customers come to us and say, what can we do to actually encourage, enable our field force guy to be more productive in Brazil, in Australia, with a machine coming from Austria? So if there's nothing you take away today around IoT, think about when it comes to field force and maintenance, that these kind of glasses will be something you will deal in the future with. Another example, what you do for training purposes, the whole world is thinking about saying, okay, we do this kind of maintenance for machines now, we tell the guy out there how to maintain these machines. But keep in mind, if you have an error occurring for the 10th time in one of your machines, it may make sense to feed that back in product and development. So whenever we do IoT projects, we make sure that if you have an error being reported somewhere, this flows back into test and into development, into research. That's something usually customers don't have in sight in the beginning, but it makes sense if you have an error recurring every time to feed that back into the production cycle. Smart buildings is something, maybe this fits. Smart building fits somewhere between what we showed about smarter city, because it's obviously around buildings. But on the other side, smart buildings, smart production is something you have in every industry. On this slide, there's one error I'm not encouraging you to do. Of course, it makes sense to talk about the amount of coffee. That's always important in a company. But there's something which we which we never saw being realized, and that's the powered gym. If you want to connect a cross trainer or a fitness belt in the gym, if you want to connect it to IoT, it is so expensive, it is not justifying the business case. So leave the guys in their gym, don't connect them, but it doesn't make sense from a project point perspective to connect the gym. All the other sensor-based information do make sense in there. If you talk about how to control only room and temperature, controlling the temperature in a room together with humidity is something you can do because the sensors are already in place. If you hook them up to analytics, the business case is 8% saving per year. That's the second number you may want to take away today. Hooking up a room and the sensor-based information you have in a room, hooking that up to an analytic tool and seeing how you can control that better is saving you 8% per year. It is justifying the business case in the first year. That's something I can promise to you. How would I start an IoT project? And Jeremy mentioned it in my introduction. I came from IBM with Microsoft, and these are more the bigger companies on this planet. But when I think with customers about how to actually kick off an IoT project, you know what? I would start with one single sensor. One single sensor. I would pick one single sensor from your machine. I wouldn't even pick the whole machine. And start connecting that one to the Azure landscape or to a cloud landscape and see how this is emerging. It is a journey, and you will learn when you start this journey, but you have to start it today. You have to start it today. Don't start big. This is one thing. If you want to start big, multi-country, it will fail. It will fail. Start with one of your machines or start with one sensor. This is something said on the left-hand side. Start with the things you already have. You have enough, I promise you. For the 80% of your business case, you already have all the sensors in place. Does it make sense to use cloud? Because if you want to control an elevator, if you want to control your machine, we had this already. Can you do it in your data center? Of course you can do it in your data center. But as soon as you start to implement social data from outside, if you start to integrate weather data, because it may make sense if in Austria you want to maintain one of your skiing lifts there, it may make sense to also pull in weather data that you see, is it snowing up there, is it raining up there? And this is one of the reasons why I think cloud makes such a big sense. You have no idea how many data how you are combining with the existing data you have. So social data from the internet, let's say weather data, external data, is something you don't want to save and store in your local data center. Storage is still the most expensive thing your CFO will tell you he has in his company, in your company. So storage is expensive, and that already is a good justification to start with a cloud-based solution. In addition to that, it is the services around mobility, around analytics you have running in the cloud. It is services you already have there, and you don't have to develop on your own. Combine the data you already collect, saying this is something where you need an analytics tool. It is really making sense that all these different data sources you have, first create what we say, create a data lake. So just collect all these data, and then put analytics on top of that and see what meaningful things you can do. And I can promise to you, the whole thing, what I said to you right now until this point, takes up to 3 to 4 weeks to get this whole thing set up. Starting an IoT project, starting a small IoT project, is an easy thing to do, and it doesn't cost very much. The biggest issue right now is you have to get up and you have to start doing it. Don't waste time. And that's my only thing I would like to encourage you to do. Get up and start your small IoT project. It will grow by the time, I can promise to you. Thank you.